All right, welcome to another episode from the Chart Reader. So I want to cover three on this video today. We'll look at MLGO one more time. I want to cover plug on this one, and then we'll take a quick look at lucid. All right, I've got a bunch of technical thoughts, but I think I'm going to use this opening thoughts moment to just take a quick look at the indices, and then we'll start getting into the ticker shortly. All right, but really quickly, NASDAQ looked like a good day, but it did not end as well as I wanted. All right. Normally, you're going to hear me say, hey, if you can do a point 0.3 day on an index, that's really normal. That's really good. And I'm happy with that most days. All right. I don't like today because if you look in the box over there, we actually open all the way up here at 19,300, almost 19,400. All right, that's where we open. But then we actually drop almost 200 points and come all the way down to that 19.1 that we closed at, right? I'm not a fan of that. I want a normal green day, not a filled in one. And again, this is a reason why we have four candle colors, right? It's not just red and green. There's good, good, and bad, good. And there's bad, bad, and not bad, bad, bad. You know what I mean? And that's what we look at. And that's why I distinguish them. This day starts up here and closes down here. That is not as good as one that starts down here and then goes up and closes there, right? So I'm actually pretty disappointed in that NASDAQ day. When we look at the S&P 500, it's actually the same thing. We start all the way up here. Hey, this one falls a lot more, and I'm at least at the minimum glad we rebound. I am not taking that for granted at all. But yeah, I'm not a green day to me doesn't mean you open up here and drop down there. You know what I mean? So that's definitely a little annoying to me. I don't look at the Dow Jones that much, to be honest with you. I really do focus on those other two. Hey, this one's at least a better 0.28 because hey, this one at least opens down here and goes up there, right? End of the day, it's just a doji, and hey, if you've seen my videos before, the doji doesn't mean too much. It just kind of means wait till tomorrow. So I'm taking that with a loose grain, right? But Nasdaq doesn't look as good as it does. All right. Same with the S&P 500. All right. So that's at least some opening thoughts on the market. Real quick, I'll do some opening thoughts on the technicals, and then we'll get into the details shortly. Right. So my last MLGO video was this day. I believe it was on the 22nd. All right. And to me, I think this outcome more than anything emphasizes the importance of the 8 moving average, right? This line is really, really hard when you're under it. It's really hard, and you can see a full 2 months of just pain from this line. But like when you're over it, you can just start bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. I mean, you can ride the line up, and this stock, as I keep zooming out, right, there's definitely more instances of it under the 8 than over the 8. So to me, this was all about the 8. I know we talked about it on the Discord this morning, MLGO. There was someone, yeah, he calls out a $3 target, and hey, believe me, I see where he got it from, right? And I'll go over it shortly, but like I said in the morning, I'm going to say it now. It's all about the 8 moving average, right? So that's what I'm looking for. That's what we'll be talking about. I do like the volume, but again, I need a little bit more, right? Plug is an interesting one. And again, I think it's the same 8 moving average with a little bit of the 20, right? This thing has been under the lines for a long, long time. But all of a sudden, you can see we're now testing the 20, testing the 20, testing the 20, testing and potentially going. All right. I say potentially because obviously we got as high as there. But to me, that right there, that combo of 1, 2 isn't good enough for me to call confirmation. But hey, we're at least trying, and I think it's well worth taking a look at. All right. And then lastly, lucid. I mean, this looked like a pretty decent setup, right? We were trying to break over all the moving averages. We actually had a positive MACD. We had a pretty healthy RSI, right? It was sitting in the 50s, 60s, just kind of waiting to go. And unfortunately, at least for now, we're victim to too many moving averages. right? You hear me say it all the time when three or more, let alone four or more, or let alone five, all five of them are this close, it's just this tornado, and it throws you up, throws you down, throws you up, down, and I mean, you're just kind of at the mercy of the lines, right? So I don't know if there was any crazy news. I don't think I saw anything, but yeah, this is what too many moving averages looks like, and it's a tough thing. All right, so before we do go any further, though, and I give you more of my thoughts and opinions, what are we going to do? Same thing we always do, right? We'll take a look at the daily and the weekly to see how these things are setting up short term. We have our five moving averages. There's one at least right here. There are horizontal support and resistance lines that I do draw manually myself. And then when we are done up here, we'll use the MACD, RSI, and volume as our lower indicators. We're going to start here. Hey, really quickly, if you can, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video online with your friends. Comment good or bad if you disagree. Look, anything you can do helps so much with these YouTube algorithms. But for real, just being here, giving me your time, oh, I'm so grateful for it, all right? So let's get into MLGO. And look, real quick, I'm going to at least start with the comments from my last video. And then we'll start getting into what happened today and what we're expecting for tomorrow, right? So on the last video, I was liking the setup that we had here. This is a really good, strong candle. When you look in the box to the left right there, the high of the day, 2.17, excuse me, $2.17, duh. That is literally the close of the day, right? The high of the day being the close of the day. That's a real strong thing. That means people are just buying and buying and buying, right? We see a was it positive yet? No, it wasn't positive. You can see that the MACD was a -2, but still we got a nice green over red and the beginning of the divergence, right? Obviously it's continued, but hey, it's not positive yet, and we'll get into today, right? But we got the beginning of the divergence starting. We see the same divergence on the RSI. We see a nice low number. And again, diverging just means two lines going away from each other, right? It's a fancy way of saying that. We want green to diverge up and away, not down and below, right? So good green over red, good green over red, good low number, could be a better number, but not bad, good candle. All that's a lot to like, right? And I think the fact that the next day, you can see it, we actually open up here, right? We close the Thursday down here at 217. We then open at $2.33, right? That's a gap up right there. I know it's kind of small and it's nothing significant, but like the strength was there, right? We wick on up too, but again, there's a reason why I do these videos at the close of market. We really care where the day ends, where the candle ends, and unfortunately, this didn't end well enough. Now, you can say, hey, we at least held the 8 moving average, which for sure we did, and I'll get to that shortly, right? But in general, you gotta at least hold half of the day before. And I think we did give up too much. Like, we're down here. It basically looks like roughly we gave up 66 and we only held like 33% of that, right? So I think comparatively on the candles, I wasn't that happy. And again, I'm gonna say it one more time. I said it in the opening thoughts, just in case you fast forwarded. We've been struggling with this 8 moving average pretty much for the entirety of 2 months, right? We lose it in early April. We're basically knocking on the door of early June right now, right? So April and May just kind of struggling with the line, right? So to me, just being a little bit over it isn't good enough, right? And I think that gets echoed the next day, right? So we're now under the line, but look, you hear me say it all the time, a doji does not count as confirmation, okay? We couldn't confirm up, but we're also not confirming down. And that's basically what happens again today. And in some ways, hey, that's actually not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Because hey, historically, we barely can get over that line. And then from there, we're at least not just quickly losing it and giving up and blah, 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 right? So holding it isn't bad. I'm going to cover it after. But in some ways, it's also what plug power started to do, right? This thing was going under. It starts to kind of horizontal out. Now there's a lot more 20 moving average going on, and we'll talk about that shortly, right? But it comes to a point where you're going down, you start to horizontal, and then it's either up or down, right? This one went down, kind of seems like this one's going up. We'll get into that ticker a little bit later, right? But MLGO, at least on the daily, looks like it's going from down to maybe the start of horizontal, right? We're still a bit away from that from that 20 moving average. I kind of wish it was just a little bit closer, but yeah, for now, I don't know if I necessarily am going to echo the same $3 target. I think the first target for me is going to be basically 240. If you break 240, I'll be real honest. You know, I even might move up the first target to 275. At that point, 275 and 240 are probably, pinching hairs. And then even 275 and 3 are probably pinching hairs, right? But I think we'll use 275 as the first target. And then from there, you can see my 413 line above it, right? But end of the day, nothing is going to happen until 160 breaks well. And again, if you're looking in the box, that is what the 8 moving average is. I think arguably you can use 190 as a decent entry point. All right? I think if you can break 190, you're going to start getting into 50% of this candle right here, and you can hopefully go from 190 to that 240 range. That's actually not a bad percentage right there, right? I think that's about a 20% move. I think that's more than 20%. I can't do the math that fast in my head. No, that's about 20%. Yeah, it's not too far from that, right? So that's a good entry. And then, hey, you can see what happens at the 20 moving average when we get there, right? But historically, I'm just kind of taking a look. Sorry, I went silent. Look, I think the one thing. No, you can't even release it. Yeah, I don't know. There was a reverse split right here too, so I don't know. I don't know. I will at least look from the reverse split on. This stock tends to basically be under the 8 and then just kind of even on this one it just flies over it, right? It's under and then it just kind of goes, right? So I understand the allure of like looking and waiting and this and that, but to me, sometimes it's kind of wait. There's a value. There's no such thing as safe in this crazy market, right? But there's a value to waiting a little bit. I think that first trigger arguably could be with between that 188 and 190. Really, I think the real good trading will come around 260, because if you can break 260, there isn't a lot stopping it from going all the way to 4 something, let alone where the moving averages go. Because again, I respect these lines more than my simple little human click, right? And yeah, you break that 260, 270, whatever your threshold is, and you actually might be talking 5 plus. I'm actually clicking at 550 right now, right? So again, everything is dictated by the 8 moving average in my opinion, and don't forget how much this stock has struggled with the 8. All right. I think just to close it out, look, volume isn't looking bad right now. Okay. I realize there's obviously more red than green days, but as I'm just zooming in, right? The last the last 6 days, okay. Um, this green is more than this red, okay? This green is more than that red, and obviously this red is more than this green, right? So I think averaging out between all these, there was probably a pretty even amount of buying and selling. I don't know if there's maybe a little bit more buying, a little bit more selling. Nonetheless, I think the volume echoes the flatness of the chart that I mentioned above. And at the bare minimum, even when it's flat, we're at least at or over the 50-day line. So volume isn't bad. It's not great, but hey, if we break the 8 and we start breaking that 190 number, I think volume will start to come, let alone if we break that, right? I think the danger line is going to be 140. And I think it makes sense that that's what we wicked. You know what? Let me draw that line real quick right there. My click, boom. Cannot lose 140. I'm going to make this the red death line. If too dark, can't see it. Good. If we lose 140, this is going to go into all-time lows. And believe me, I know that all-time lows is all the way down here. to me, if you lose 140, you're quickly going to come to 116, and I don't think you're going to get back over that, and bad things will happen. So, makes sense to me that we wicked it down there. I think the problem is we didn't wick high enough, right? We only wicked to there instead of that 190-ish range that we talked, excuse me, that I talked about. I think I will end it with earnings are next week. If I'm not mistaken, someone in the comments mentioned it's the third. Let me know if that's correct or not. Look, earnings doesn't care if you're under or over all the moving averages. Earnings can do some crazy things, and if they can drop some good guidance, some good, contracts, partnerships, whatever, obviously that's going to do some crazy things, right? So keep earnings in your back pocket. For me, at least everything I said is probably just the technical thoughts up to earnings, all right? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. Even if you disagree, let's take a look at Plug. And I will be very honest. I've been watching Plug for a bit. All right. I very very much ignored it from here to here. I know there was no reason to, right? If you watch my videos, bad things happen under the 8 and 20, let alone under all the moving averages, right? So this thing was very very much out of my radar for a while. All of a sudden we were starting to see some interesting tests on the 20 moving average, right? And again, I always say the 8 and the 20 for a reason. You really need to get over both and confirm over both to start thinking sustainable and start thinking, well, let's go after the next lines, right? So, bunch of losses to the 8s, bunch of losses to the 8s, all of a sudden holding the 8, testing the 20. That's not a bad place to be. You know what I mean? So, hey, real quick, if you can subscribe and share, I forgot to say that. It does good things with the algorithms, all right? Obviously, some big things happened yesterday. All right, we got a nice boost of volume. This clearly has been, and I'm going to just zoom out and zoom out and zoom out and zoom out. And my goodness. Whoa. At the minimum, yesterday's volume was the biggest volume since 2019, right? That's a 2019 candle, right? You can see it. Volume was all the way up here. There was absolutely nothing near that volume. So I'll be honest, I don't know what happened yesterday. Let me know if there was any news, please. That'd be awesome. At the minimum, I'll tell you this. Once it got over 50% of that, look at that. The 50% candle that I'm clicking on right now is basically to the penny, the bottom of this guy right here, right? So yeah, once it, and look at that. Now I'm looking over here. It's basically to the penny where this line is right there, right? So once it got over 83, 84 cents, there was absolutely nothing but red, 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 right? Like, let me just draw the line real quick. Once it basically got into here, we're over 50% of this candle. We're now getting into this candle. All of a sudden, there's nothing but red, red, red until the line. And yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense to me that we go from 83 all the way to 103. All right. Let me know, please, in the comments if there was news, though, because again, to me, if yesterday was the biggest volume day since 2019, I'm hoping that was for a reason. All right. Nonetheless, even with the biggest volume thing that I said, we're never here getting too excited on a single candle. All right. You need the next one to confirm. And unfortunately, a doji never counts. Look, this is at least a better doji than some other ones that I've seen before. Like, I'm glad the doji didn't close down here or down here, right? I'm glad it's up here. I think it's cool that the wick went all the way up there. I do. I think it at least is trying to say, hey, there's some good here and there's some power and this and that, right? Dojis never count, and you still got to give the doji the 50-50 respect it deserves. This thing very easily can still fall to roughly 86 cents tomorrow. I think that's a very very realistic, possibility. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, otherwise, if this thing gets over 8.93 cents, there's probably nothing going to be stopping it to go from to 103. I would set an alert. I'm actually going to do it right now. Let me know if this thing goes to 94 cents. It's not the biggest of percentages, but you're actually adding about 10 cents. And roughly speaking, that's a little bit more than 10%. That's a good double digit right there. Plug is amazing over 105. If this thing can get to 106, the first technical line is probably right there around 120. Realistically, you break the 50, you're going to the 100, and all of a sudden we're looking at a buck 50 right there, right? So I'll draw that just to have it, but yeah, I don't know if this is going to be much. And there's a lot to love at 106 for plug with a very nice 150 target right there. All right, I think a lot of what's going to be important with plug is what Nasdaq does, right? And we've been really flat, but at the same time, our RSI was a crazy high 88. We're now coming back down. We came back down to at least a 69, but like, maybe there's a little bit of a reset needed on the RSI on the daily. Still liking this weekly RSI right there, right? Again, hasn't confirmed well, but again, NASDAQ needs to do well. NASDAQ needs to continue up to this 19.9 line, not down to this, basically 19 flat, right? So if NASDAQ does well, I think there's a lot of reason to think that it's going to head to that, 95 test of 106. This thing breaks 106 and NASDAQ keeps going up. And oh, yeah, there's a lot to like from there, right? Um, Otherwise, yeah, look, again, I think this is just a real, it's another perfect example of the 8 and the 20, right? This is a pesky line. Sometimes they'll get over it, but then the 20 is going to be right there and throw you right back down. And then you can just see all the tests here. And hey, after so many tests, there's only so much a line can do, especially if the tests are all within like week after week after week after week after week, right? There's only so much any resistance can take, right? So I think there's more good than bad to like, but again, with that doji, it is very 50-50. So 94 and let's go. 86 and hey, there's still a lot that needs to get confirmed, right? If this loses 83, that's not going to be a good thing at all right? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. Please let me know if there was actually some big news and a real reason to make yesterday the biggest volume, that 306 million that we see right there. All right. Hey, I appreciate you so much. Going a little bit long, but not too much to say on this one. Really, I've been looking at Lucid. I know there was some sort of news. I don't remember which day it was, and there's no real big volume thing that's popping out. But I remember Lucid starting to get a little interesting. You can, at the bare minimum, see a real attempt at getting over the 200 moving average, trying to break all five and fly. And then just look at it, right? There's so much to love if it got over it, because I mean, this is just an incredible red that we would have loved to turn green, right? So Lucid was on my radar. It really was. And man, that's a good candle right there over the last line. There's real good reason. Again, I said in the opening thoughts, MACD was positive. This is the only one of the three where the MACD was actually positive, right? And the green over red. RSI was a very healthy. It was ready to go on up, and yeah, it just, you can't get too excited on a single day. And just in case you did or you didn't, that's the same thing I said on plug. You can't get too excited on a single day. You need the confirmation to assume up. Otherwise, just as quickly as it went up, lucid, it doesn't confirm and it heads back down, right? The other thing I say very often is when there's too many moving averages, when there's three, that's too many, let alone four or all five. And right now you can see it is all five, right? That's too many lines too close to each other. And I call it a tornado. And you can kind of see it. It starts with these four right here, right? This is my death line, so ignore that one, right? But you go to the top, you come to the bottom, go to the top, come to the bottom, go to, like, you're just getting thrown up and down, right? And it looked good, but it now kind of see, and then obviously hindsight's 2020, right? But that looked good right there. Now in hindsight, kind of seems like the tornado saying, all right, we're gonna go up to the five, we're gonna come down to the five, right? Like it is what it is. And hey, this stock historically does that, right? Like I'm just, especially in that little cluster that I just kind of lined up at, right? There's a lot of these just stuck in the MAs, and you get thrown up and thrown down and thrown up and thrown down and just can't confirm and this and that, right? So right now it just seems at the mercy of the moving averages. I would re-engage over 288. I think if this can get back over 288, that's probably an interesting place. If this loses 230, bad things will happen, all right? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Oh, I appreciate you so much.